The crowd was roaring. The cameras were flashing. And standing in the center of the ring was the most feared heavyweight on the planet, Muhammad Ali. Then, out of nowhere, a lean, lightning-fast martial artist stepped between the ropes. Bruce Lee looked Ali straight in the eyes and calmly said 2 words, "Hit me." For a split second, the arena fell into a stunned silence. Was this courage or madness? No gloves. Okay, no hesitation. Just raw confidence against raw power. What happened in the next 3 seconds wasn't just a moment. It became a legend whispered about for decades. The atmosphere inside the arena was electric long before anything unusual happened. Trust, thousands of fans filled the seats, their voices blending into a steady wave of anticipation that vibrated through the walls. Flashbulbs popped like distant fireworks, and the bright overhead lights cast sharp shadows across the ring. Everyone had come to witness greatness, to see a dominant heavyweight champion command the canvas with confidence and charisma. Duh! The air carried the scent of sweat, leather, and expectation. It was the kind of night that already felt historic. At the center of it all stood Muhammad Ali, the undisputed master of psychological warfare and physical dominance. He moved with effortless rhythm, bouncing lightly on his feet, shoulders relaxed, eyes alive with that familiar spark of supreme belief. Ali didn't just fight opponents, he performed every gesture, every grin, every word was calculated to captivate. The crowd fed off his presence, roaring louder with each playful shuffle and shadow punch. He owned the ring before a single blow was thrown. Then something shifted. There was a subtle stir near the ropes. A ripple of movement that didn't belong to the script of the evening. Cameras tilted in that direction. Ringside reporters leaned forward. For a moment, confusion replaced celebration as a lean figure stepped into view. He wasn't dressed like a boxer. He didn't carry the heavy build of a traditional heavyweight. Instead, he moved with a different kind of intensity, compact, precise, almost coiled like a spring waiting to release. Bruce Lee entered the ring. The reaction wasn't immediate thunder. It was hesitation. Recognition spread like a spark traveling through dry grass. Whispers turned into gasps. Gasps turned into rising noise. This wasn't a scheduled bout. This wasn't promotion. This was unexpected. Bruce Lee was known for redefining martial arts, for his philosophy of speed, fluidity, and efficiency. His presence inside a boxing ring, standing across from the most famous boxer alive, created a collision of worlds no one had anticipated. Ali paused mid. For the first time that night, the champion's performance halted. His eyes locked onto Lee with curiosity rather than amusement. The contrast between them was striking. Ali, taller, broader, radiating heavyweight power. Lee, smaller, leaner, radiating explosive precision. The arena seemed to shrink around them as the space between their bodies became the center of gravity. For everyone watching, it wasn't hostility that filled the air. It was tension born from possibility. Fans exchanged stunned looks. Some laughed nervously, unsure whether this was theater or challenge. Others leaned forward in absolute silence, sensing something authentic in the way Lee carried himself. He didn't appear reckless. He didn't look intimidated. His posture was relaxed yet alert, his gaze unwavering. There was no swagger, no exaggerated bra, just presence. Ali circled slightly, still bouncing, studying the unexpected visitor. The champion thrived on unpredictability, yet this moment felt different. This wasn't a press conference, joke, or a verbal sparring match. The ring was sacred territory, and stepping into it uninvited required either incredible courage or complete madness. Lee took another step forward. The crowd noise dipped again, almost instinctively, as if thousands of people collectively held their breath. Photographers scrambled for position, lenses zooming in to capture the improbable face-off. Two icons from different fighting philosophies now stood only feet apart, separated by inches but divided by disciplines. Boxing versus martial arts. Power versus speed. Tradition versus evolution. No official announcement had prepared the audience for this. There were no referees signaling a start, no gloves being raised for introduction. Just two legends occupying the same canvas under blinding lights. Unexpected nature of it magnified every second. The unpredictability made it electric. Ali's expression shifted into a half-smile, half-squeation. He was known for welcoming challenges, for turning doubt into spectacle. Yet, even he seemed intrigued by the audacity of the moment. Lee's eyes remained steady, focused, almost analytical, as though he were measuring distance and timing without visibly moving a muscle. The arena that moments earlier had been deafening now felt suspended in a fragile balance. Every cough echoed, every camera click sounded amplified. The unexpected ring challenge had transformed the evening from a predictable showcase into an unfolding mystery. No one knew whether it would dissolve into laughter, escalate into confrontation, or crystallize into something unforgettable. The tension thickened with each heartbeat as the two men stood face to face. Rewriting the rhythm of the night, simply by sharing the same space under the lights. Bruce Lee didn't raise his voice. He didn't pound his chest. He didn't posture the way fighters often do when they want to intimidate. Instead, he stood there with a calm that felt almost unnatural under the glare of the arena lights. His breathing was steady, shoulders loose, eyes fixed directly on Muhammad Ali. In a place built for noise and bravado, his quiet confidence cut deeper than any shout ever could. Then he said it. "Hit me." Two simple words, spoken without hesitation. No smile, no sarcasm, no trace of doubt. It wasn't a joke tossed into the air for entertainment. It sounded like a challenge stripped to its purest form. The boldness of it rippled through the arena faster than a punch ever could. Fans who had been murmuring seconds earlier fell into stunned silence. Even the photographers seemed to freeze, their cameras hovering mid-click as they processed what they had just heard. To understand the weight of that moment, you have to understand who was standing in front of him. Muhammad Ali wasn't just any boxer. He was the heavyweight champion, a man whose punches had dropped giants, whose speed defied expectations for someone his size. Ali's hands were fast enough to blur on camera and powerful enough to end careers. When Bruce Lee said, "Hit me," he wasn't inviting a tap. He was inviting force. Yet there was no recklessness in Lee's expression. His stance subtly shifted, almost invisible to the untrained eye. One foot angled slightly, knees soft, torso balanced. His hands hovered in a relaxed guard, not clenched in fear, but positioned with precision. This wasn't bravado built on ego. It was confidence built on discipline. Years of training, thousands of repetitions, endless hours refining reflex and timing had shaped the stillness in his body. Ali's eyebrows lifted for a fraction of a second. The champion was known for verbal warfare, for playful taunts and poetic insults. But this was different. This was silent audacity. Ali circled a half-step, testing distance with his eyes. He had faced fearless opponents before, but most showed it through aggression. Lee showed it through composure. The crowd began to murmur again, tension rising like pressure in a sealed chamber. Some believed Lee was about to be humbled instantly. Others sensed there was more happening beneath the surface. The contrast between them intensified the drama. Ali represented raw heavyweight dominance, size, reach, proven knockouts. Lee represented something less conventional, speed that bordered on invisible reaction time that seemed almost predictive. When Lee repeated himself, softer but unwavering, it carried even more weight. Hit me. There was something almost philosophical about it. Bruce Lee had long spoken about adaptability, about being like water, fluid, formless, responsive. His martial philosophy wasn't about clashing force against force. It was about inefficiency, about intercepting and neutralizing energy before it fully formed. By inviting Ali to strike, he wasn't surrendering control. He was testing it. Ali's glove twitched slightly, a reflex born from instinct. The champion's confidence met Lee's composure in a silent exchange that said more than words ever could. This wasn't just about whether a punch would land. It was about belief. Did Lee truly believe he could avoid or counter the fastest heavyweight hands in the world? Did Ali believe? This smaller martial artist understood the magnitude of what he was inviting. The arena lights seemed hotter now, casting sharp highlights across sweat-sheened skin. Every muscle in both men's bodies looked sculpted by anticipation. Li's face remained calm, but his eyes were alive, calculating angles, reading micro-movements, absorbing information. Fearlessness didn't mean absence of awareness. It meant complete trust in preparation. For the audience, time stretched. Unnaturally, seconds felt elongated, suspended in possibility. The challenge wasn't loud or dramatic, yet it carried more intensity than a shouted insult ever could. Bruce Lee's fearless moment wasn't about proving dominance through volume. It was about standing in front of one of the most powerful punchers alive and daring him to act without flinching, without blinking, without retreating. Muhammad Ali's presence inside the ring had always been larger than life. He moved with a rhythm that seemed to blur the line between dance and combat. His footwork light, almost playful, yet rooted in devastating intent. His shoulders rolled as he shifted weight effortlessly from one foot to the other, gloves hovering near his chin, ready to explode forward at any instant. The world knew the damage those hands could deliver. They had toppled champions, silenced doubters, and rewritten the limits of what a heavyweight could do. Across from him stood Bruce Lee, built differently, trained differently, wired differently. Where Ali carried the mass and reach of a boxer sculpted for 12 punishing rounds, Lee carried the compact efficiency of a martial artist trained for instantaneous reaction. His muscles were lean and tightly coiled, every fiber conditioned for speed rather than prolonged exchanges. His stance wasn't square like a traditional boxer's. It was angled, economical, minimizing target exposure while maximizing responsiveness. The contrast was almost scientific. Ali's raw power came from leverage and torque. Years of training had refined the mechanics of his punches, the snap of the jab, the whip of the cross, the crushing hook delivered with hips and shoulders rotating in perfect sequence. Even his feints carried weight. A slight twitch of his glove could force opponents into defensive panic. His speed, remarkable for a heavyweight, was amplified by his reach. He didn't just hit hard, he hit from distances most fighters couldn't comfortably defend. Bruce Lee's speed operated on a different frequency. His movements were sharp, direct, and stripped of excess. He believed in intercepting rather than absorbing, while a boxer might block or slip a punch before countering. Lee trained to strike within the opponent's initiation, to disrupt the motion before it fully developed. His philosophy emphasized the shortest path between intention and impact. No wasted motion, no unnecessary wind-up, just immediate response. As they faced each other, the visual tension deepened. Ali's gloves floated like warning signs, heavy leather poised to crash forward. Lee's hands, lighter and more fluid, hovered with subtle readiness. Ali's power was visible in his frame, broad shoulders, thick forearms, the density of a man accustomed to trading blows with the biggest fighters in the world. Lee's power was less obvious but no less real, forged through explosive drills. Fingertip push-ups, relentless conditioning that sharpened every muscle for rapid contraction. The crowd sensed the clash of principles unfolding before them. Ali shifted his weight, testing range with a faint shoulder dip. It was a movement that had deceived countless opponents. Against most fighters, that twitch alone would provoke a defensive reaction. Lee barely flinched. His eyes tracked the motion without committing his body. It wasn't arrogance, it was calibration. He wasn't measuring strength, he was measuring timing. Heavyweight boxing relies on rhythm. Establish the jab, control distance, create openings, deliver combinations. Martial interception relies on disruption, break rhythm, collapse distance, strike before the second beat forms. Ali's dominance had been built on mastering tempo inside the ring. Lee's mastery came from dismantling tempo entirely. Power versus speed is often described as a simple trade-off, but in that ring it felt more complex. Ali's punches carried the authority of gravity. If they landed clean, the effect would be undeniable. Lee's speed carried the authority of surprise. If he moved first or intercepted correctly, the exchange might never fully materialize. One relied on force, magnified through mass and momentum. The other relied on precision, magnified through acceleration. Ali's foot slid forward slightly, closing inches of space. The subtle creak of canvas echoed under the arena lights. Lee readjusted by a fraction, maintaining distance without retreating. It was a chess match played through muscle and instinct. Every micro movement carried consequence. Every breath felt amplified. The psychological dimension intensified the physical. Contrast, Ali radiated charismatic dominance, a champion accustomed to commanding attention. Lai radiated focused intensity, a student of combat psychology who understood that stillness can unsettle as deeply as aggression. The heavyweight's grin flickered briefly, as if testing whether the moment would bend towards spectacle. Lee's expression remained centered, eyes alert, body balanced. Two systems stood inches apart, one built to overwhelm through impact, one built to bypass through speed. The air between them seemed charged with potential energy, as though the slightest trigger would release a collision not just of fists, but of philosophies forged in entirely different arenas of combat. No one boop in the arena could have predicted how quickly the moment would unfold. The tension that had been stretching time suddenly snapped back into motion, what felt like suspended reality compressed into a heartbeat. Muhammad Ali's glove twitched. Forward. A movement so sharp it sliced through the thick silence like a blade. It wasn't a wild swing. It was controlled, direct. A heavyweight jab launched with instinctive precision. For most fighters, 3 seconds is barely enough to register impact. In that ring, it became eternity. The first fraction of a second belonged to Ali. The extension of his shoulder, the rotation of his hip, the familiar snap that had defined his reign. The glove surged forward with deceptive speed for a man of his size. Cameras flashed, attempting to capture what the human eye could hardly process. The crowd inhaled collectively, bracing for contact. But Bruce Lee had already begun moving. Not backward in panic, not sideways in retreat. His body shifted with surgical economy. His head tilted just outside the punch's center line, a motion so minimal it seemed almost unreal. His lead hand flicked subtly, not to block with force, but to redirect, grazing the glove's path and altering its trajectory by inches. The punch that might have landed square instead cut through empty air. The second unfolded in layers. Ali's glove completed its extension, missing by a margin so small it felt impossible. Lee's feet adjusted simultaneously, sliding with quiet precision across the canvas. He didn't telegraph. His rear hand shot forward in a straight line, targeting the opening created by the misjab. The movement was not exaggerated. It was compact and explosive, like a coiled spring released. The speed was startling. To the crowd, it appeared as a blur, a flash of motion, intersecting with space before most had processed the miss. Lee's strike wasn't thrown with heavyweight mass, but it carried crisp intent. It represented timing rather than brute force. Ali's head shifted slightly from the contact or near contact, more surprised than shaken, registering that the exchange had not followed the expected script. By the 3rd second, everything had changed. The audience erupted not because someone had fallen, but because something unprecedented had just occurred. The heavyweight champion's punch had been neutralized and answered in the blink of an eye. It wasn't about knockouts or domination. It was about proof. Proof that speed, timing, and fearless execution could stand in the same ring as overwhelming power. Ali stepped back half a pace, recalibrating. His expression shifted from playful confidence to sharp respect. The grin faded into focus. He had thrown with intent and met something entirely different in return. Lai remained poised, feet planted, hands relaxed yet ready, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. His breathing stayed even. His posture remained balanced. The 3 seconds became a story before anyone could fully describe it. Reporters scribbled furiously at ringside. Photographers checked their cameras, hoping they had captured the instant where expectations shattered. Fans shouted in disbelief, some laughing in amazement, others shaking their heads at what they had witnessed. It wasn't a full fight. It wasn't an official bout. Yet it felt historic because it challenged assumptions. Power had met speed. Mass had met precision. Tradition had met innovation. In those brief seconds, the idea that disciplines must remain separate dissolved. The exchange demonstrated that combat was not defined solely by size or reputation. It was defined by timing, by preparation, by the willingness to test belief against reality. Ali's punch had represented the pinnacle of heavyweight boxing. Lee's response had represented the pinnacle of intercepting motion. The canvas beneath them seemed smaller now, charged with the residue of that lightning-fast interaction. The arena noise swelled and twisted, fueled by adrenaline and disbelief. 3 seconds had rewritten the atmosphere of the night, transforming curiosity into legend, turning a spontaneous challenge into a moment that would be retold, debated, and mythologized for years to come.